Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to commend in support of this budget. This is not the ideal budget that, in an ideal world, we would have brought. This budget is the equivalent of saving a patient who's just suffered a traumatic attack from 8 years of neglect. This is a budget that draws a line in the sand to end the uncertainty and mismanagement of 8 years of the previous government's failures. We are left with debt and deficit, $55,000 for every man, woman and child in the Northern Territory, with very little to show for it. We have a number of over-engineered white elephant projects that would have made sense had they been project managed and looked after in a much more sensible and rational way. It is a good idea to have an overpass at the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙬𝙍𝙍 Road intersection. We've had a few deaths there, but is it worth off the top of my head, $160 million, significantly over budget? That's for Territorians to decide. Is it worth having a shade structure over Kavanagh Street, which doesn't keep anyone shaded or anyone cool, which costs us, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to maintain? Even the shade structure at Cullen Bay is currently already well covered because of the simple choice of actually listening to the experts who know which vine will grow fast and provide the right cover. Do I need to talk about the facility down at the racecourse? $12 million, which the Chief Minister walked into Cabinet under his arm, which his Chief of Staff wrote to the proponent and said, "This is the letter you need to send us." This is the legacy that we have to deal with. In my electorate of Blain, we have had 8 years of deficit in infrastructure spending. Maldon and Woodruff were part of the original 4 suburbs of Palmerston established back in the 80s. And as such, some of their infrastructure is coming on 40 years old. The water pipes in Maldon are a constant trauma to the people of Maldon, to the good people of Gumnut. I hear you, and your pipes that are 40 years old and failing, and you're left with insecurity and not knowing when the water will come back on or when it will be cut off next. I hear you and I'm fighting for you. This is the investment that we need to have, that I will continue to fight. But unfortunately, because of the vast debt, $11 billion, that we find ourselves in, I was not successful in this budget in getting money to repair your pipes, but I will continue to fight. We need a lot more investment around Maldon and Woodruff. We need investment in Bellarmac. I want to speak about the broken promise. When that suburb was designed, the developers promised parklands, lakes. People bought in Bellarmac expecting there to be wonderful green areas to walk outside their house, like the sanctuary lakes that my good friend, the member for Drysdale, has in his electorate. And what were they left? With the legacy of the Henderson Labor government that managed that project? Nothing.
Silence.
No. The government is responsible for holding developers to account. Unfortunately, those developers have now gone bankrupt and they're gone. So we are left to clean up the mess. Bellarmac needs investment. Obviously, this will have to be staged over a period of time to facilitate sensible investment. But my vision for Bellarmac is one day there will be green spaces there, similar to sanctuary lakes, for the good people of 𝙍𝙼 to enjoy, to walk in the afternoon, to walk their dogs, to go for the kids to go fishing in the lakes, so they don't have to live through the burn-offs every year because the spear grass comes right to the other side of their road and it has to be managed. So our hard-working public servants and volunteers in Bushfires NT go and do fuel reduction, which means the entire suburb gets covered in smoke. I'm sure they would love to have green lawns across the road there to enjoy. I could go on and on. The car parking at the Palmerston Raiders. We had a home game just last weekend, and every single home game, the Palmerston Raiders, unfortunately, are a victim of their own success. Because when that facility was built 15 years ago, it was designed for a certain size and a certain number of members. Now they've grown far beyond that original projection. So when we have a home game, not only is the tarmac car park full, also the grassy area inside the compound is full. Also, people are parking under the trees on the Raider grounds. Also, they're parking up and down the road on Alston Avenue. Also, they're parking on the Crown land next door. Also, they're parking on the streets into 𝙍𝙼 because there's not enough room to park. They need more parking, and I will be fighting for more room for people to park at the Palmerston Raiders venue for the safety of the community, because right now people have no choice but to park on the road, to park on yellow lines, and it's not safe. Go the Raiders. Indeed. We need money for youth programs. I want to talk about the 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙬 2421 boxing program, which is a fantastic boxing program that currently runs out of a shed in Pinelands. And they recently went down south to represent the NT and did very well, and congratulations to them. But we need more youth programs for the youth of Palmerston. We have young people who are full of energy. They're going through their teenage years. I know what it's like to be a young man, 13, 14, 15, 16 years of age. You're trying to define your own identity. You have all these hormones. Your muscles are growing, and you want to prove yourself. You want to set out and define your identity, and push back against the constraints of childhood. And that leads to a lot of behaviour. Now, unfortunately, in Palmerston, we have a lot of good programs, we have a lot of great sports clubs. We need more. I would love to see more boxing programs for these youth, because unfortunately I'm hearing reports that instead of going home in the evening, sometimes they congregate and form fight clubs, and they sort out issues from school around the corners in large groups. This is not acceptable. If you want to fight, let's have a boxing club. Let's train, exercise, wear gloves, do it properly. We need healthy, appropriate venues for young men, teenagers, to be able to exert themselves, to be able to work out their physical aggression. We've talked a little bit this sittings last week and this week about male violence. I'll just say that. And I think we need to accept male aggression as a fact, that it exists, and the discussion should be, well, how do we channel it appropriately? You know, we need to channel it to protecting, to providing, to building strength for those two purposes. And so there's an appropriate place for young men to learn how to control their aggression, to learn discipline, When I was a kid, I did karate, I did taekwondo, I did 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙬𝙀. That is all about discipline. You learn to fight, fair enough. You learn to defend yourself. But mostly, it's about discipline. It's about learning when it's appropriate to use force and how much force to use. And the overriding principle was self-defense or the defense of others. We need more good youth programs. 𝙍𝙀𝙇𝙀𝙀 are fantastic, but they're a long way from Maldon. They're a long way from Grey, my colleague, the member for Drysdale. We need these programs where the people are, so that instead of a lot of my constituents, they don't have cars. Even catching a bus is a challenge. And I look forward to the announcements from my colleague, the Treasurer, about the future of the Palmerston bus interchange, because many people have raised concerns about the Palmerston bus interchange, the safety. It's well on the public record, the number of incidents that have occurred there, serious violent assaults. And we've responded with increased police presence. When I talk to the good police of Palmerston, they often raise the efforts they're putting into the Palmerston bus interchange, but it continues to be a concern. So my constituents, they struggle. They can't just jump in the car and drive over to Pinelands. We need these programs right in the heart of Maldon, right in the heart of Grey, accessible by foot falcon, by push bike, so the kids can come, they can train, they can see healthy male role models, healthy masculinity modelled in an appropriate way, and they can see that there's another path. There's not just, because the problem that I see in Palmerston is this gang culture, unfortunately, has grown over the last 8 years. And I will concede there has been a temptation to gangs for a long time. When I was growing up, the Kerle Ghetto Boys, the Kaz Boys, the Palmo Boys, those were well-known names. But we never saw the sorts of things we see now: carrying knives, carrying machetes, planning assaults, riotous fights. I don't remember any of that when I was growing up here. And I'd be interested to hear from anyone else in this chamber if they remember anything when they were growing up here like what we've seen over the last 8 years. So we need alternate choices. So when these young men, and I say young men, so when they are growing up and they look around them, they see two pathways. One pathway is their peer group, who come from disadvantaged homes, yes, who grew up with intergenerational trauma and domestic violence and all those things that we talk about a lot in this chamber. And in that group, how do you move forward? How do you raise yourself in the hierarchy? How do you attract those of the opposite sex, which many young men are concerned with? Well, you compete by fighting, beating other people up, establishing dominance. Who can, commit, various kinds of crimes? Who can bait the police and get away with it? Who's wearing an ankle bracelet? I don't think these are healthy ways for young men to compete. I would love to see more youth programs, more sporting groups. Go the Raiders, go the Northern Sharks, go the Palmerston Crocs, go the Magpies, go the boxing clubs, go the Woodruff Karate Group. We need more programs like this so that young men, as they're coming into puberty and their testosterone is surging and they are seeking opportunities to break out and prove themselves, they have the opportunity to choose a healthy path. On the one side, they see some of their peers who are making bad choices, and shout out to the Palmerston and Regional Basketball Association. I've watch their work for quite a while, and they do amazing work. And their constant mantra is make good choices. I hear them regularly when they're dealing with some of our at-risk youth. They say, are you making good choices tonight? And they know them by name. I won't repeat the names here, but they know them by name. They say, hey, Johnny, are you making good choices tonight? Hey, Sally, are you making good choices tonight? Cool, keep making good choices. That is what we need more of. So when these young people, young men and women, are growing up and they see on the one hand a peer group who are at risk and they're choosing to engage with crime and drugs and antisocial behaviour and an underculture, they also have exposure to groups which are making a different choice. They're making a better choice where you can be strong, yes, but focused and disciplined and constructive. And you can build a life and you can build skills and education so that...
I'm so sorry.
So that they can make a life for themselves, make a life for their partner, have children, buy a house, buy a property, stand tall with respect and identity and be proud of themselves. You know, they don't need to fear any man because what they have, they've built and they've earned, not because they've stolen or they've sold drugs and they have to be careful because if the police come, you know, they'll get in trouble and they'll have to, you know, run away. But they earned it and they can stand tall and proud. That is the vision that I see for Palmerston, a place for families, a place without broken glass on the streets. Thank you to the Attorney General for her actions to take glass off the streets of Palmerston. And there's a lot further to go there and we will keep fighting. I see a future for Palmerston where children can walk the streets of Maldon, walk the streets of Grey, walk the streets of Woodruff, walk Emery Avenue without fear of getting glass in their feet, without fear of dangerous dogs that have gotten out because people have to have dangerous dogs to feel safe in their home because young people who roam the streets at night are making bad choices, making the wrong choices and thinking that it's cool to go and break into someone's house and steal their stuff. Trevor Miller. Our seniors need to be safe in their homes. When our young people make good decisions, our old people will be safe. They won't need to build big fences and have big dogs. They can go to bed at night and sleep well until the next morning. I'd like to speak now about why I think the Territory needs the CLP and needs this CLP government. Growing up here, it was a different world. There was no... I never remember being aware of race as a child, even as a teenager, because we had people from all places. We had our wonderful Indigenous family. We had Asian immigrants. We had people from Vietnam, Greece, Cyprus, all over the world. And we all just got along. There were some tensions between some groups, but that was mostly friends. It was common to forget to lock doors in the house or car. Come home, just leave the keys in the car. Most people were trustworthy. As a teenager, I remember going to mates' houses, riding home in the dark, and not even thinking, not even imagining that something bad could happen, that I could be assaulted. There was a real sense that in the Territory you could grow up and rise to be anything. You could do anything. We did have a bit of a boom and bust economy, but there was always opportunity for anyone who wanted to roll up their sleeves and do a hard day's work. We never worried about the looming tax burden for our kids, or will there even be a future for the Northern Territory? Will we need to have a federal intervention? You know, people are talking about, a federal intervention, will need to happen. No. When we were growing up, there weren't these levels of debt. The debt was small and it was focused on capital works, infrastructure and co-investment. We didn't have to borrow to pay for the day-to-day running of the government. What kind of a concept is that? Any treasurer, any government that approves a budget, that pushes it, and I'm speaking here of the last 8 years, we have a situation that we have to repair. But over the last 8 years, the treasurers who approved budgets that pushed us out into unsustainable levels of debt should hang their heads in shame for what they've done to the Territory. What a hangover. They had a party, they got drunk, and now we have the hangover. We are the ones who are having to make hard decisions. There's so many things. I've spoken about all the things I would love to see investment in my electorate. But we can't. It's going to have to be deferred over multiple years, if at all, because we have the hangover of the previous government's party where they drank and got merry and got full drunk on the taxpayers' dime. And now the bill is coming due. Growing up here in the Territory under the CLP government, large infrastructure projects were conceived and rolled out, keeping the good health of the balance sheets in mind. Because, and this is an important thing that those opposite would do well to remember, the deficits of today are the tax burden of tomorrow. The unfunded spending of today is the bill that our children will have to pay tomorrow. I have 3 boys. I'm trying to teach them about fiscal responsibility. So I get them to do chores around the house. There's things that they do because they're members of our house, and that's expected. They have to clean their room, make their bed, get dressed in the morning. And they have opportunities to earn money because I want them to have a growth mindset. I want them to have a mindset where they can go, instead of limiting their mindset to, I've got to go and get a job and just, do my hours and get my money. They can think, I can borrow Dad's lawnmower and I can go to every house in the street and mow their lawn and I can make some money from each of them, and then their growth potential is unlimited. So I'm trying to teach them about responsibility. And I give them IOUs because I know that if I pay them cash, that money's going straight to the canteen and getting turned into lollies. Because I started off paying them cash. I say, all right, mate, you can mow the backyard, I'll give you a hand. All right, that's $5. And then a week later, where's that $5, mate? Oh, it's gone. And then when I ask a few questions, it's gone to the canteen. It's turned into jumpies and ice cups and lollies, and it's gone. So now we're working on saving, because I believe in raising young Territorians who know the value of $1. They know how hard it is to earn it, and they know how good it is to save it, so that when they spend it, it will be spent on something that has enduring value. Not just lollies and jumpies that are here now, a sweet taste in the mouth, and then gone. And a great example of the management of the previous CLP government. So the former, and I believe inaugural member for Blain, Barry Coulter, was a great champion for the Territory. He fought hard for the Darwin to Alice Railway. Now, they could have gone out to market, issued a lot of debt, built that railway all on their own, and the NT government at the time would have been on the hook for the whole lot of it. But no, he was a savvy businessman. He understood the value of a dollar. He understood that the 𝙍𝙬𝙼𝙍 Railway was a key piece of infrastructure linking the southern seaboard via Adelaide to our Asian neighbours to the north. It had to be built for the benefit of the territory. It was a key piece of nation-building infrastructure. But he didn't want to go it alone. So what did he do? He lobbied the federal government. He found private partners, and they entered a public-private partnership where the NT government only had to chip up about a third of the price. So we got 100% of the value for a third of the price. That's a pretty good deal. And I wish the previous Labor government would have taken that lesson more to heart, because then maybe our debt would be lower and we'd have more assets in our balance sheets. We set aside national parks and hunting reserves. The member for Nelson is a strong advocate for our hunting and fishing, and I look forward to the hunting reserves that he'll be strengthening throughout this term of government. One day I should do a speech on all the national parks that the CLP government over the years has established and compare them to the Labor government's record. In the previous term, we saw our parks and waterfalls close due to failures of management, failures of relationships, Gunlum Falls, Douglas Daly Hot Springs and others.
That's enough. Excuse, Leader of the Opposition, there's no discourse across the chamber. It's
still closed all the same. But I should move on. The DNA
Opposition Leader,
of the CLP...
Please be quiet, or you can leave the chamber if you continue to talk across the chamber. You'll have your chance in a minute to stand up and talk if you choose. Adjournment.
I'd like to continue my speech, Madam Speaker. I have 2 minutes on the clock. The DNA of the CLP was forged. I'm a student of history. I have a lot to learn, but I'm studying. And I'm studying the history of the CLP, and I am amazed by what I find. Hyacinth Tungatulum, one of the first Indigenous politicians in this country, proud member of the CLP. The DNA of the CLP was forged in the frontier environment of this good territory, fighting the elements, building infrastructure, attracting people from down south and around the world to come here, bring their families, lay down roots, start businesses, work hard and invest. As a result, the DNA of the CLP is strong, resilient, sometimes sharp-edged, but it understands the value of money and the preciousness. I will take a moment to invite those opposite to consider, what is money? Money is condensed time. It represents the only thing in this life that you can't get more of: time. That's why it is so precious, and it must be ferociously guarded and carefully spent. That CLP DNA is represented by all of the members on this side of the chamber, and I'm so very proud of it. And with 30 seconds on the clock, Madam Speaker, I will cut my speech off there, and I commend this budget to the House. Thank you.